So hear me out. The story of Gorr the God Butcher is pretty much the story of Job. If it was flipped on its head, run over by a semi-truck, then whatever pieces are still there is just assembled with some rough duct tape and then had a multitude of layers of madness added on top of it. Or simply, it's as if God never answered Job or never attempted to connect with him even through all of his suffering. Should Job watch all of his children and family die, then when he got to the part of the book of Job where he cursed the day he was born in Job chapter 3, Job sees two gods fighting and came into the knowledge that God and other gods does exist, but when one of the gods asks for his help, he takes the sword which was created from the anthropomorphic embodiment of darkness that existed before God said, "Let there be light," kills the other god that was asking for help, and then proceeds to go on and slaughter every single god in the universe. Probably the most outlandish gymnastics of an intro yet, but I'll elaborate on that later on in the video. And if by the end of the video you're able to see why I made such an outlandish take, then consider leaving a like and subscribing for more fictional media breakdowns from a Christian perspective. In the upcoming Thor Love and Thunder movie, Gorr the God Butcher is going to be played by Christian Bale and would be the main villain of the film. However, unlike other MCU villains, this one really is going to open up viewers to a completely different side of Marvel. Many supposed Christian and non-Christian fans are either not aware of or blissfully omit. But we'll be getting into that as we go along. Firstly, let's take a look at Gorr the God Butcher's noteworthy backstory according to the comics, which is going to be the main inspiration and source material for the film. In the comics, Gorr the God Butcher was born on a planet with no name, where almost every day they were on the brink of salvation. He was taught to trust in the gods, but they never answered his prayers. At an early age, his mother and father died, leaving Gorr to fend for himself in the harsh environment. Years later, he married and fathered some children. However, most of them died. Gorr's pregnant mate Ara was killed during an earthquake, and one by one his children perished until he was left with one son, Agar. When Agar was on the brink of death due to starvation, Gorr sought to ease his suffering and told his son they would soon reach a forest where they would never go hungry again. Stricken with grief after Agar's death, Gorr gave up hope and outwardly expressed his belief that there were no gods, for which he was exiled by a superstitious people. While wandering the desert praying to die, Gorr witnessed a pair of battling gods, a dark elder god called Null, and a gold-armored, purple-skinned god empowered by the Enigma Force. They plunged out of the sky and crash-landed nearby Gorr. Shocked by the realization that gods did exist, Gorr was enraged when the gold-armored god begged for help. The dark god sword transforming into an amorphous mass of living darkness and bound into him. Gorr used his new weapon, all black, the Necro Sword, to kill the armored god, then vowed to seek vengeance against all gods for never answering his prayers, and set out to kill them all. Gorr despised any god and traveled the cosmos for thousands of years to exact his revenge, embarking on a crusade in which he allegedly killed many gods of fear, war, chaos, genocide, revenge, plagues, earthquakes, blood, wrath, jealousy, death, degradation, and a few gods of poetry and flowers. Thor and Gorr had a lot of run-ins throughout the comics, and this reason alone is why he'll have such a prominent role in the upcoming film. At some point in the 9th century, Gorr arrived on Earth and killed a god from the Americas. Its body was found by Thor in Iceland. Sometime after, Thor found some of the Slavic gods dead. In his discovery, Thor was attacked by Gorr, who nearly managed to kill Thor, but just before the killing blow, Thor conjured a lightning strike which knocked both of them out. Gorr recovered and escaped to a cave where he once again fought Thor. But despite Gorr attempting to torture Thor for information about the location of Asgard for 17 days, Thor held out long enough for his Viking worshippers to find him, distracting Gorr long enough for Thor to recover and cut off Gorr's right arm, believing he had succeeded in slaying him. Gorr, surviving their encounter, would spend the next 1,000 years butchering more and more gods, growing ever stronger and amassing an army of dark minions to assist him in his crusade. Thor eventually noticed Gorr's activities centuries later and began hunting him when a prayer summoned him to a world without gods, as Gorr had slaughtered the deities of that world. While Thor went to the cave where they once fought to look for him, Gorr attacked Kronos, a place inhabited by time gods, to lay waste to the pool of forevers and use the blood of the time gods to traverse the time stream. He then went back to the beginning of the universe and slew one of the very first elder gods, taking the infant deity's heart as a trophy. He then headed forward in time a millennia into the future and arrived in Earth 14412, claiming a desolate world to serve as a space of operations and enslaving all the gods he could capture except for All-Father Thor, who he routinely tormented over his failures. Over the next 900 years, Gorr forced the enslaved gods to mine broken planets and the cores of stars for material to build the God Bomb, which he intended to use to exterminate all gods across the entirety of the time stream. Gorr also created constructs of his deceased wife and son from the all-black symbiote, though, unbeknownst to him, his son embodied his subconscious self-loathing. Thor the Avenger from Earth 616 arrives in this time, and Gorr sent black berserkers into the past to get the young Thor from around 800 AD, which is the Thor he first met, and brought him back to the future, where he was enslaved along with the other remaining gods. The young Thor, using a piece of a star, attempted to destroy the God Bomb, but instead catapulted over the planet where he met with the other Thors. The three Thors decided to assault Gorr and his planet for the last time and nearly succeeded in killing him. But due to absorbing the power from the gods he had killed, Gorr was too powerful and defeated the three Thors, leaving them for dead. Gorr then set off to activate the God Bomb. When the construct of his wife called him a god, Gorr angrily killed her. However, the construct of his son, Agar, decided to assist Thor the Avenger in bringing down the God Butcher, having come to recognize that his father had essentially become the very thing he always despised. Charged by the prayers of the son, as well as every single surviving god across space and time, Thor absorbed the God Bomb's blast as well as a necrosword. Using its power, Thor was able to weaken Gorr, with Agar denouncing Gorr as a god of hypocrisy before Thor's past self finally killed him. Even though Gorr was dead, his consciousness was contained inside the All Black, finally at peace in an empty void without gods. Eons after his death, Gorr was resurrected by King Loki. All Blacks then host, because it was a symbiote, in order to kill him after he killed All-Father Thor, so manifesting a copy of his body from the symbiote. Instead, Gorr interrupted their duel by reclaiming All Black and impaling Loki through the back with it. Crucifying Thor and Loki, Gorr mocked them both but was blasted into orbit by the power of the All-Father. Recalling the shattered pieces of offshoots of All Black, Gorr engaged All-Father Thor in a battle that devastated solar systems, vowing to make Thor watch as he slaughtered the inhabitants of Midgard and all other remaining life in the cosmos, before creating his own and ensuring they were devoid of the need for worship. Attacked by Loki, Gorr mutilated him, before engulfing both brothers in All Black, declaring he had transcended mortality and not become a mere god but a force of nature. However, the gods who Thor had saved and sent to Indigar billions of years in the past were awakened by the goddess of thunder, who returned in time to save their grandfather and uncle. Overwhelmed, Gorr was decapitated by Alti Woden Dorte, but revealed that his body had been a construct manifested from the all-black symbiote, which he had used to infect the very universe itself over the course of the fight. Gorr tried to devour Thor by manifesting a black hole, but was distracted by King Loki telling him the story of every heroic deed Thor had ever performed, buying time for Thor to unleash the full might of the god Tempest from within Mjolnir, destroying the all-black symbiote. Restored to life as a mortal but left amnesic and insane, Gorr was taken in by the Skylords of Indigar to live out the remainder of his days. All that I just read can be found on the Marvel comic book wiki in relation to Gorr. The background footage, of course, is taken from Comics Explained. In our previous video, we dealt extensively with the depiction of gods and God in both Marvel and DC media. In that video, we discussed the supposed origin of gods and their functions in Marvel Comics, and we touched on the one above all as well. So, we aren't going to be touching on those topics covered in that video again. But if you would like to know more about those topics, then check out that video when you are finished with this one. Now, we're going to be taking a look at the philosophy and worldview of Jason Aaron, the creator of Gorr the God Butcher and prominent writer at Marvel. As stated in many of our other videos, knowing who along with what the writer, director or creator behind any piece of fiction that you enjoy believes is more important than you think. Oftentimes, the style of content is perceived as a sort of righteous indignation by super religious Christians who can't seem to enjoy any piece of fiction because everything is leading to Satan's agenda to do away with Christianity in the last days, and that we are making stuff up about the things we cover, when we are just quoting what the creators, actors and directors have said in various interviews that are freely open to everyone if they take the time to simply Google search it. Jason Aaron is a Mesotheist. I have heard other YouTubers like the guys over at Good Fight Ministries pronounce it as Maltheist, but the only spelling and definition I could find for it is under Mesotheist, which is someone who believes that we should hate God. There is more nuance to it though, so we're going to run some clips from videos by Wisecrack and Good Fight Ministries touching on Jason Aaron's philosophy and some of his clearly blasphemous work.
Misotheism is less a theological proposition than a philosophical perspective. It says nothing about what God himself is like. He might be the Jewish Elohim, or the Christian Trinity, or the Muslim Allah, or Paul Blart Mall Cop. Regardless of which God is real, misotheism is the belief that we should feel only contempt towards God. Of course, most misotheists aren't Bible-believing fundamentalists proudly marching their way to hell just to prove a point. They're atheists and agnostics who conjure an evil deity to explain their hostility towards a god whom they don't believe actually exists.
So one of the things that he has done an excellent job for the enemy on is taking these different characters and putting a backstory to them, or personifying that backstory all the more so that people can say, yeah, that's why they're bad. Not decisions to be murderous or whatever it may be, but that's why they are bad. And so he's done a great job at this. And I think with looking at Gorr the God Butcher, he's never done a better job than endearing people to say, yeah, I understand why Gorr would hate all the gods. It's very interesting. But who is Aaron? Ultimately, who is Jason Aaron when it comes to his upbringing? Because Jason Aaron is from Arkansas, from the Bible Belt, and he grew up in the Southern Baptist tradition. And so Jason Aaron now, honestly, hates that tradition that he grew up with and now comes against it over and over in a number of comics that he has come out with.
This is the proposition that Jason Aaron is coming from. In one interview he said, "I've become more fascinated by religion and faith after I lost mine." His fascination with religion is a deeply critical one, which he expresses in fiction that supposes the existence of malevolent gods and setting his heroes against them. Aaron's most misotheistic work is The Goddamned. Set before the biblical flood, Aaron's take is a subversion of the account from Genesis. In the original, the hero is Noah, the only righteous man among a generation of human garbage, like Keanu Reeves in our day. In Aaron's telling, Noah is a self-righteous prick. Instead, Aaron's hero is Cain, the man who invented murder. What differentiates Cain from Noah is at least he realizes that he's just as screwed up as everyone else, and it's this self-loathing and misanthropy that informs his misotheism. As he puts it, "You're a fool if you think you could ever live up to the expectations of the all-goddamn mighty. He made us, right? He made us in his own image. Up." He tells a mother praying for her child, "He can hear you just fine. He hears everything. Every scream, every cry, every whimper, every plea for mercy. for death. He hears. He just doesn't give a f. Aaron's run on the Avengers also subverts a creation myth, this time the genesis of life on Earth 616. Previously, the abundance of superpowered beings was believed to be the result of ancient experiments done by the Celestials. In Aaron's version, Loki reveals the true history. Life on Earth from the very beginning was a cosmic fluke. The gods had no plans or purpose for humanity. The Celestial came not because of some grand cosmic design or godly destiny. It never even consciously chose this world. It came merely because it fell. Why is the Earth so uniquely eccentric within the near infinite number of planets strewn across the heavens? Not because of any grand purpose, I can assure you. As with the goddamned, this is a deliberate inversion of the Genesis story, with the fall preceding the creation, and not the fall of man, but of God. And again, a fallen god results in mankind being made fallen in his image. Aaron's first issue introduces the ultimate misotheist, Gorr the God Butcher. Gorr once had faith in the gods of his species, but after watching his family all die of sickness and starvation despite their prayers, he became an atheist. At least until two gods crashed upon his planet and asked for Gorr's aid. Having had his prayers go unheeded, Gorr became enraged that they dare ask him for help, and so he became a serial killer who slaughters entire pantheons simply so that entire worlds will have no gods to pray to. Just as he subverted the Genesis account in the Goddamned and Avengers, here Aaron subverts the gospel narrative, playing with the same motifs. Jesus was crucified to save mankind, dying and rising 3 days later. Similarly, Gorr crucifies every god in all of existence, and Thor becomes the savior of all godkind, dying and rising 3 days later. Establishing Thor as the greatest and most worthy of gods, including the Christian conception of the crucified god, is essential to Aaron's argument. During their battle, Gorr says to Thor, "You know I'm right. That's why you fight so hard, why you try so desperately hard to seem noble, because you see just how petty and useless your kind truly are." This is Gorr's thesis, that no god is worthy. Enter Jane Foster. Jane is also written by Aaron as a misotheist. She's met the gods face to face and found most of them to be jerks. A constant adversary throughout her tenure as Thor is Odin himself. This is important because Odin, the Asgardian All-Father, is pretty clearly analogous to the Judeo-Christian God the Father. But out of all the gods Jane clashes with, it's Kithri and Shara, the gods of Shi'ar, who really reveal the extent of Aaron's misotheism. They're the antagonists in the Challenge of the Gods, which, in typical Aaron style, subverts another story out of the Bible, this time the tale of Job. In a nutshell, Job's story tells us that though we cannot know God's purpose and might find his actions capricious in the midst of our suffering, we must have faith that his mysterious ways really do work.
That's the most horrible story I've ever heard. Why would God do such horrible things to a good person just to prove a point to Satan?
Aaron's argument is the opposite. He presents the gods of the Shi'ar as genuinely indifferent to their supplicants, causing them to suffer simply to win a bet. Then there's the whole Challenge of the Gods thing. This is an eons-old contest that pits one pantheon against another to see who can accumulate more worshippers. The various categories they compete in read like a long list of indictments against the God of the Bible. The first challenge calls upon the gods to produce natural disasters, not unlike the flood. The second calls upon the gods to produce plagues, a la the 10 plagues with which God ravaged Egypt. In the inspirational infanticide round, Kithri and Shara force one of their worshippers to tie his son to an altar and sacrifice him, directly evoking Abraham's sacrifice of Isaac. The list goes on. Eventually, Jane simply refuses to compete any further. But before the contest had even begun, she articulated what made her worthy over and against any god. "I was holding a mortal woman in my arms as the cancer that had ravaged her brain slowly consumed what was left of her life. All I could do was listen as she prayed. She prayed to all the gods. Yet, where is that woman now? Tell me, in what heaven does she reside? None of them, because no god bothered to listen or care." By ending the challenge prematurely, Jane inadvertently releases the final foe she faces as Thor, Mangog. Having played with the stories of Genesis, Job, and the Gospel, the arc with Mangog is Aaron's take on Revelation. Just as Revelation foretells the judgment of mankind by Christ, Mangog is feared as the judgment of all godkind. Mangog is quite literally misotheism made manifest. He embodies all the rage of every mortal ever wronged by the gods. So clearly misotheism is all over Aaron's run on Thor.
Is your jaw dropped like mine when I first went through this information? Or do you still don't care because it's just a piece of fiction? I mean, I don't even think further explanation is even needed, and it's simply up to you to choose what you are going to do with all the information presented. In doing research for this video, I came across this interview of Christian Bale at the Thor Love and Thunder world premiere, where he said this.
I love how much you find the enjoyment in this. I mean, you obviously have to, but it comes through so much in the performance and in the character of Gorr. I was just overjoyed every time you were on screen. It was so much fun to watch Gorr doing his thing.
You're obviously a very sick man.
Yes!
Be overjoyed to watch a god butcher doing his butchering.
You know,
Well,
that's between me and my counselor, but yeah, you're not too far off.
But that's the thing, though, is that I was saying this earlier, that every enemy in the MCU, there's a grain of truth in what they say, and they have a lot of their supporters. How do you feel like there was something with Gorr that would make everybody go, he's kind of right?
Well, I mean, let's make no mistake. He is a butcher. He is a monster. But, yeah, there might be something that you see where you go, I'm a little conflicted here. You might just find a little bit of understanding in him.
We look forward to getting to know and understand him more. Thank you so much for talking with us,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Bale.
Christian Bale, everybody!
When you see the movie, it's going to make you feel like Gorr the God Butcher, that was pretty much written to be the personification of hatred towards God, pondered the thought, well, he has a point. Now obviously I don't think they are going to go all out and adopt all aspects of the comics, but at the same time I'm not putting that past them neither, given what Multiverse of Madness turned out to be. But I just want you to think on all that was shown in relation to Gorr the God Butcher, especially if you are a professing Christian, and ask yourself, what am I putting in my spirit when I go watch this film? Because that really and truly is the only question to be asked here. When I started typing this script about 2 months ago, summarizing the Marvel Wiki info on Gorr after the Thor Love and Thunder teaser came out, I was on the fence of if I'll watch this one or skip it like I did with Doctor Strange 2. I was even leaning more towards the side that I'm going to see it opening weekend with some friends, but after doing this research, I'm definitely reevaluating that chain of thought, because this is next level blasphemy. Like, it can't get any worse. Like, it isn't even a God parallel or Bible parallel or similarity, it's blasphemy. The author behind the comics the film is drawing its source material from openly professes to hate God. A funny comment that made me laugh so hard that was left on the Wisecrack video said, he seems like a good writer, although it doesn't take much effort or skill if you're copying 90% of your work from the Bible. After watching the Wisecrack video, it is so evident and clear that most of his acclaimed work is just blasphemous renditions of Bible stories mixed in with a nice combination of the Marvel characters we love. I know these videos are viewed by a growing number of non-Christians, which is actually the goal of the channel, especially people who identify as atheists, judging by the declining like to dislike ratio of previous videos and shorts, along with 15+ reply chain debates and arguments in the comments. But I really want to know from the regular atheist audience of this channel, do you co-sign and resonate with this type of work? As in declare blasphemous just flipping Bible scriptures and call it a new piece of fiction that writers like Jason Aaron create, and if so, why or why not? Just a question that came to my mind after seeing another comment on a Wisecrack video that spun into a 27+ reply discussion that said, I'm agnostic, but mesotheism just seems like really edgy atheism. Don't mind me though. I'm just mad Jason Aaron completely ruined my favorite comic book character, She-Hulk. I know not all atheists think the same way not all Christians think the same. So I would just like to know what the Xplanations audience think of work like this. So feel free to leave all thoughts in the comments below, because I would really like to know. And in touching on comments, I have one for the regular and new Christian viewers that I would like to share, where someone said under the Should a Christian Watch Obi-Wan Kenobi video, so I'm trying to think through this stuff. Does it only matter if it causes us to sin, or is it just the act of watching it wrong? I know the Bible says, I will not set my eyes before anything that is worthless. I hate the work of those who fall away. It shall not cling to me. Taken from Psalms 101 verse 3. The context of Psalm 101 verse 3, according to some theological sources, is that it was written after David was anointed to the throne over all of Israel. David knew that one measure of his righteous life was what he chose to set before his eyes. As we all know, there are many wicked things to set our eyes upon in life. He also knew that if he wanted to live a godly life, it would be wise to keep some distance from those with a perverse heart, as evil company corrupts good habits. He knew that a righteous life must have some sense of determination about it. Even though he did not perfectly fulfill his determination, his life was undeniably more godly with this determination than without it. It is important to understand the context of a scripture, especially a psalm, as each one links to a particular event in the Bible, and not knowing David's or the author's situation when writing the psalm can lead to misinterpretation. But this doesn't stop us from applying the meaning of the psalm into our life in an application-like manner in full context, because after all, none of us watching this video just ascended to a throne. If you did, please let me know in the comments. But for us Christian fictional media fans, there comes a point where we begin to realize that these things are heavily twisting the word of God, and we begin to feel convicted. But in that early stage of our conviction process, we tend to either go the extreme and begin to get rid of everything. Some of us would begin to wonder if just owning a TV set on a whole is a sin. And to that, in my reply to the commenter, I stated that the mere act of watching is not a sin, but it's a matter of what we watch and what place of mind does it carry us when we watch it. Now, just a disclaimer, that is not Xplanations co-signing that you could go watch anything once it doesn't put you in a bad place of mind. As I said, it's what we watch. What we watch has to line up with what the Bible requires of us. Putting that out there before some madness just before some kind of comments that come out. Just know that is not a co-signing to watch whatever you want to watch. Keep that in mind. And yes, it may seem like every corner of entertainment is pushing nothing more than a God-hating agenda. Not an Illuminati confirmed moment, please. And for some of us, we may get a stronger personal conviction towards watching a particular show than others may get. And I urge you not to quench it, as for everyone, it may not be the same. And because of this, we need to remember that God is so loving that He deals with each of us in the way He sees fit. But at the same time, there are principles that He has set before every single person that we universally ought to follow if we want to live a life that glorifies Him. And going according to the commenter's comment and others that have been popping up, it is clear that many of you are in your own process. So I'll just say, let the Holy Spirit guide you through conviction and discernment, and be intentional with what you are giving up. Do it truly from your heart, as 1 Chronicles 28:9 says, know the Lord of your father and serve Him with a whole heart and with a willing mind, for the Lord searches all hearts and understands every plan and thought. And with that, we'll end up the video right here. Hope you enjoyed and got something out of it. Our next video will touch on a Christian preview to Thor, Love and Thunder, where we will discuss speculation and other information about the things we deem necessary to consider if anyone, especially a Christian, is planning to see the film. As stated in the intro, if you were able to see why I made up an outlandish take comparing the Book of Job to Gorr the God Butcher, then consider leaving a like and subscribing for more fictional media breakdowns from a Christian perspective, or leave a like and subscribe for any other reason you deem fit. But in subscribing, remember, these videos are not to tell you what you can and cannot watch, even though it may seem like that at times, as that is your decision to make, but it's so that you no longer blindly consume.